Tasty light shines so bright.
I used to think the Kinks story was just great songs and brotherly violence. Then I read the actual paperwork, the contracts, the lawsuits, the bans, and I realized this band spent almost their whole career fighting for one thing, not fame. Control over the music itself. 10 times the Kinks had to fight to keep what was theirs. Let's get into it. Number 10, banned from the country that made them. I remember the first time I read about this one and just sitting back in my chair, because it's almost unbelievable. In the summer of 1965, the Kinks toured America for the first time, and by the end of it, promoters and union officials filed complaints over the Kinks' conduct, prompting the U.S. Musicians Union to withhold work permits from the band for the next 4 years, effectively banning them from U.S. performance.
The sunset, I am in paradise.
4 years. Think about what that actually means for a band. And here is the part I did not know, Inal, and I wish I had known sooner. It wasn't one big scandal, it was a slow unraveling. The band balked every step of the way when being forced to sign U.S. Musicians Union's contracts so they could play in America, and when they skipped their San Francisco show, the promoter issued a formal complaint with the American Federation of Musicians.
Need no friends.
Things came to a head when, according to reports, a union official hurled insults at the band backstage and Ray Davies threw a punch. That was it. That was the end of America for the Kinks. For 4 years. Here's the thing about this that nobody talks about enough. This wasn't a creative fight. This was a fight over the most basic form of control there is. The right to just go where your music is and play it. And they lost that fight completely. The reason we got banned was a mixture of bad agency, bad management, bad luck, and bad behavior. So we deserved everything we got, Ray said later.
Station every Friday night.
But it got lifted 4 years later. We literally signed a confession. It was a confessional. We didn't even read it. I know how that sounds. A band signing away their voice on their own scandal just to be allowed back into a country. But stay with me, because this is the one where the plant starts. There's a story on this list where the fight for control gets so serious, it changes how the Kinks operate forever. They stop asking, and they start building. We'll get there, and I think it'll change how you hear the rest of this list. Ray Davies later said, "That ridiculous band took away the best years of the Kinks' career when the original band was performing at its peak. And you know what the wild part is? Locked out of America, unable to tour the music they were making. This is exactly the stretch where they wrote some of the most quietly devastating British songwriting of the decade. Denied the room, they built a smaller one, and it turned out to be enough." Number 9, the court case that took Ray Davies' own songs away from him.
Society, God save strawberry jam.
I love this part, and I hate this part at the same time. Because this is the one where it gets cruel. Early in their career, before anyone knew what the Kinks would become, Edward Kastner Music Co., an English corporation, had acquired the worldwide copyrights to musical compositions written by Ray Davies. Read that again. The copyrights to Ray Davies' own songs, not licensed, acquired, signed away, in the tangled mess of teenage band management deals, before Ray had any leverage to say no. And you already know what I'm going to say, because you would have felt the same thing I did reading this. When the band tried to walk away from their management, their firm served a legal notice advising Denmark Productions that the Kinks intended to terminate their existing contract. It turned into a legal war that dragged on for years. Ray blames a chunk of the band's self-destruction on the strain of the legal fallout from dismissing their manager and trying to escape publisher Eddie Kastner, which kept most of Ray's royalties from him until 1970. A grueling court appearance on 28 July 1968 only half freed him. 1968.
Reservation Society.
The band is writing Waterloo Sunset, they're writing Days, they're building the Village Green Preservation Society, some of the most tender, specific songwriting in British rock, and Ray is sitting in a courtroom fighting to get his own royalties back from a man who owned his songs on paper. I think we were rebelling because the lawsuit was still going on, Ray said of that period.
Persecution, affinity. God save the liberal.
They were dark days. The court case was horrendous and haunted us all those years. We couldn't afford the costs of £25,000. It shows you how near the edge we were. Here's the truth underneath the legal one. The courtroom fight bled directly into the music.
God save Donald Duck for the village.
The whole reason Village Green sounds the way it does, small and wistful and turned inward, is partly because the man writing it was fighting, in real time, to hold on to what was already his. This is the one I've told the most people about in real life, because it's the quiet proof that some of your favorite Kinks records were made under actual siege.
We are the Village Green Preservation Society.
Let's look at the numbers. Only 9% of you are actually subscribed. Honestly, that's tough to see. Our team spends days hunting down archives and verifying every single fact just to tell these stories right. If you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly part of the community, so please hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps us immensely. Now, for those already subscribed, very few of you have made the jump to our membership, and that's a hard pill to swallow because you're the ones who know our value best. If this channel has moved you or inspired you, consider joining. It's the price of one coffee, but it's the literal fuel for this channel. Let's keep this alive together. Back to the story. Number 8, the solo career they never let Dave have. I need to tell you something about this one. It's not a lawsuit, it's not a ban, it's smaller and somehow sadder than both. In 1967, Dave Davies had a genuine solo hit, Death of a Clown, made number 3 on the British charts. And for a minute, it looked like Dave Davies, the guy who tore up his amp with a razor blade to invent that "you really got me" sound, was going to have his own separate career standing next to his brothers. Wanting to profit off the buzz suddenly surrounding Davies, a solo LP was slated for release. And here's the part that gets me. It never happened. A planned solo album, mixing blues covers with original work, was abandoned. The follow-up single did well enough, Susanna's Still Alive, peaked at number 20 in the UK. But by the time 1 or 2 more singles met the same results, Davies' own lack of interest in continuing, combined with the label's decision to stop, killed off any hopes of an album. The record that could have existed, sometimes called, almost affectionately, a hole in the sock of, just quietly dissolved. And I want to be honest with you about something. Every single one of those solo records, Susanna's Still Alive, featured all of the Kinks members as his backing band. It was never really separate. It was the Kinks wearing a different name, tethered to Ray, tethered to Pi, tethered to a machine that had decided there was only room for one Davies out front. You've had a version of this experience, maybe not with a record label, but that specific feeling, building momentum towards something that's yours, and watching it get folded back into someone else's plan. I know you know this feeling. Dave went back to the band and pushed his guitar louder in the mix instead, and kept submitting a song or two to every Kinks album from then on. He found a way to keep his voice inside the thing he couldn't fully separate from. Number 7. Ray pulls the album back from his own record label. This is the one where Ray Davies does something almost nobody in his position gets to do. He says no to his own record company, at the last possible second, over an album that would become one of the most beloved things the Kinks ever made. The Kinks Are the Village Green Preservation Society was scheduled, packaged, and ready. And then, Ray pulled this 12-track album at the last minute, even after it had already gone into limited production in other countries. Ray entered a test of wills with Pi, refusing them a single for fear they would, as usual, promote a single instead of the album, and wanting instead a full theatrical stage show treatment. And I know how that sounds. A songwriter holding up his own record's release because he's worried about how it'll be marketed. But this is the part where it gets beautiful. He first demanded a 20-track budget album, before finally agreeing to a 15-track single LP, a version that ended up gaining several important songs recorded during the standoff itself. The fight didn't just delay the album. It made it better. This is Ray Davies, mid-legal battle over his own royalties, in the commercial dead zone of his band's career, refusing to let his record label decide what the most important thing he'd ever written should look like. It flopped commercially. Nobody bought it at the time. And it's now considered one of the great British albums of the era. Some records don't just sound good, they know something about you. And Village Green only sounds the way it does because somebody fought, quietly and stubbornly, to keep it from being turned into something else. Number 6, 50 years of fighting over who actually played the solo. You know this one. We all know this one. But sit with me for a minute, because where this one comes from is a story that makes the song sound different on the other side of it. You Really Got Me has one of the most famous guitar tones in rock history. Dave Davies tore his amp speaker with a razor blade to get that snarl. You really got me now. You got me so I guess we bad. For decades, a rumor circulated that it wasn't actually Dave playing that solo, that a young session player named Jimmy Page had come in and done it instead. And this is the part I did not see coming. Dave Davies has spent literal decades, not years, decades, publicly, repeatedly, fighting to correct this. Davies said it was him, and not Page, that played the distinctive part, writing on Facebook after a BBC documentary falsely credited Page with the solo, "I, Dave Davies, invented the distorted guitar sound and played the solo on You Really Got Me," and Ray Davies played rhythm guitar. And it's not just Dave saying it, Page himself denied the story point blank. "I didn't play on You Really Got Me." He added that Ray Davies had objected to Page's presence in the studio in the first place. The Kinks just didn't want me around when they were recording. And here's the part that still gets me. This fight didn't stay in the 60s. It kept coming back. In 2024, a producer's old quote resurfaced claiming he'd witnessed Page doing an overdub on the track, and Dave was right back at it, on social media, demanding a retraction. "I demand an immediate retraction." I spoke to Ed Kramer yesterday, and he denies ever saying that Jimmy Page played on the Kinks' Yergum. "I played all the guitar parts on Yergum," Dave wrote. A 70-something-year-old man, 60 years after the fact, still going to war over authorship of 4 minutes of guitar. And I get it completely. Because this isn't vanity. This is someone refusing to let the record, literally, say something happened that didn't. Control over your own music doesn't end when the tape stops rolling. Sometimes it's the longest fight of all. Number 5. The BBC bands Lola over a soft drink. I have to tell you about the most absurd fight on this entire list. In 1970, the Kinks released Lola, one of the boldest, best songs of their career. And the BBC refuses to play it. Not because of the subject matter, which was genuinely daring for 1970. The BBC found the song's content objectionable, but not for reasons of gender and sexuality. The BBC objected to the song because the original version mentioned Coca-Cola. The BBC wouldn't play any songs at that time featuring commercial references, which meant Lola was essentially off-air until the Kinks released a version that removed the mention. And here's the part where Ray's stubbornness turns into something almost heroic in its pettiness. The band was touring in the US when they received news of the ban, and Davies was forced to fly back and forth between London and the tour to re-record a new version of the song while it was underway. Flew all the way from London to New York to re-record one line, changing Coca-Cola to Cherry Cola. And then, I love this, the first attempt didn't satisfy him, so he made a second round trip just to fix that two-word phrase properly. 2 transatlantic flights. For 2 words. This is the part where it gets beautiful, actually, because most artists would have just let the label handle it, sent over a hasty fix, moved on. Ray flew across an ocean twice, because Close Enough wasn't going to be on his record. The re-recorded version reached number 2 in the United Kingdom, and it remains one of the most enduring songs the band ever made.
To be that way for my Lola.
You already know what I'm going to say, because you would have felt the same thing. Sometimes fighting for control isn't a courtroom. Sometimes it's just refusing to let one crooked line stay in a song you know is right. This is the one I mentioned back at the start of this list. And I told you, it changes how you hear everything else here. Because from this point on, the Kinks stop reacting to these fights. They start building so they never have to have them again. Number 4. They build their own studio so no one can say no again. This is the one I've been waiting to get to. In 1971, the Kinks leave Pi Records, the label that had owned, shaped, and fought them at every turn since 1964, for RCA, who offered them $1 million advance. That's already a statement.
That's why she tries to be so hard, but they turn.
A band that had spent years being told what to release, when to release it, and who owned the copyright on it, suddenly has real leverage. But the money isn't the part that matters to me. It's what they do with it. Ray Davies, Dave Davies, and Mick Avery established their own recording studio, Conk, tucked away in Hornsey, North London. And I need you to sit with what that actually means, because it took me a minute to get there myself. This isn't a vanity project. This is the end result of every fight we've walked through so far. The AFM ban, where a country's musicians' union decided where they could play. The Kastner lawsuit, where a publishing company owned copyrights to songs Ray hadn't even finished writing. Dave's solo career absorbed back into the machine before it got room to breathe. The Village Green standoff, where Ray pulled a finished album back from his own label at the last second. 2 transatlantic flights just to fix 2 words in Lola. Every one of those happened for the same root reason. The Kinks needed someone else's permission, on someone else's schedule. Conk erases that in one move.
But she turned her back on stardom.
Here's the thing. A studio isn't just a room with microphones. It's a boundary. If Ray wants to chase an idea at 3 in the morning, there's no clock running on someone else's dime. If Dave wants a guitar tone nobody upstairs approved, there's no upstairs.
She looks so weak and fragile.
And I know what you're thinking right now, because I thought the same thing the first time this clicked for me. This feels like the actual answer to everything before it. Not a lawsuit won, a building, a key, a door that locks from the inside. This is the story I mentioned, where the fight stopped happening to them and became something they built a wall against. Conk still stands today, half a century of Kinks history, made behind that one door, on nobody's schedule but their own. Number 3, RCA lets them go big. Almost too big.
This morning, I'm gonna miss her bloodshot alcoholic eye.
Here's the twist in this one that I didn't expect one. Sometimes the fight for control isn't against a label saying no. Sometimes it's against nobody saying no at all. And that's almost harder to talk about, because it doesn't have a villain in it.
Take me back to the Black Hills. I never.
With Conk built and RCA's money behind them, Ray Davies spent the early to mid-70s going all in on ambitious concept and theatrical work. Full narrative albums, stage productions, entire imagined towns with their own characters and politics and heartbreak. Muswell Hillbillies, Preservation, soap opera.
Something that I'm not gonna share, but I'm a Muswell Hill.
This is the period, right after all that fighting for freedom, where the Kinks had about as much creative control as any band of their era. Nobody was pulling an album back from them. Nobody was demanding a different single. Nobody was making them fly across an ocean to fix a lyric.
My hills and I'm green. I've seen them in my...
For the first time in a decade, the only person setting the boundaries on a Kinks record was Ray. And this is the part where it gets complicated, because winning full control doesn't automatically mean winning the audience. Commercially, especially in America, several of these sprawling theatrical records struggled to connect the way the sharper, tighter singles of the 60s had. The freedom was real. The songs were ambitious, often genuinely brilliant in pieces. But ambition and reach don't always travel together. And this is the stretch where you can feel Ray testing exactly how far that freedom could go before it started working against the band instead of for them.
My name, you don't know who I am. My name's Johnny Cash. It's good to be here.
I know some of you have felt a version of this in your own life, in whatever form creative freedom takes for you. The moment nobody's stopping you anymore, and you realize the hard part was never getting permission. It was knowing what to actually do once you had it. Ray kept swinging for the big, theatrical, fully realized version of the band, and it would take one more label and one more hard conversation to pull things back toward the center.
She wore her Sunday hat when she left me.
Number 2. Arista tells Ray, no more concept albums. The fight that finally goes the other direction. In 1976, the Kinks signed to Arista Records, and label head Clive Davis makes a condition before he'll even do the deal. On enticing the Kinks from RCA, Clive Davis made the stipulation that concept albums were off limits. Davis convinced the band to sign under the condition that Ray would abandon his fancy for full-length theatrical works and concept albums, a huge change in operations, given the Kinks had done little else since Village Green. And this is the moment on this whole list where I catch myself feeling two things at once. Because for years, this band fought to keep outsiders from telling them what to make. And here, for the first time, Ray actually says yes. Ray dutifully adhered to the instruction on Sleepwalker, their debut on Arista, 10 melodic, unconnected pieces, which became their highest charting album by some distance. I know how that sounds, like a surrender, but I don't think it was. I think, after everything, the ban, the lawsuit, Dave's shelved solo career, 2 transatlantic flights over a soft drink brand, building an entire studio just to be left alone, Ray finally had the standing to choose the compromise himself, instead of having it forced on him. A few years later, on Low Budget, Clive Davis would request one specific radio-friendly hit, and the band delivered Wish I Could Fly Like Superman, recorded, notably in their own studio, on their own terms, to someone else's brief. That's the whole story of this band in one sentence. Even when they said yes, they said it from a position they'd built themselves. Number 1. Ray Davies blocks another show to protect his own.
Sunny afternoon.
This is the one that proves the fight never actually ended. Not in the 60s, not in the 70s, not even now. Decades later, long after most bands would have made peace with just letting the songs belong to the world. In 2012, a theatrical production called Mod Rock was preparing to open in Los Angeles, using 2 Kinks songs, Sunny Afternoon and Dedicated Follower of Fashion, that its producers believed they'd properly licensed through Warner/Chappell Music. They'd spent, by their own account, hundreds of thousands of dollars mounting the show and recording a soundtrack around those songs, on the understanding that the clearance was settled. And then, just days before the show was to open, the producers were told the songs weren't cleared for use after all. The reason, according to the lawsuit that followed, Ray Davies wanted them for his own show, Sunny Afternoon.
Save me, save me, save me from this.
And Warner allegedly warned the other production not to use the songs again. reportedly so the Davies-Warner songs could be used exclusively in Davies' own musical, which he believed was competitive with the plaintiff's production. I want you to actually sit with the timeline here, because I think it's the whole point of this list in miniature. This is nearly 50 years after Sunny Afternoon was written. 50 years after the AFM ban took his band off American stages. 50 years after the Kastner lawsuit had him standing in a courtroom fighting to get his own royalties back. Decades past the flights to fix 2 words in Lola. Decades past building Conk just to stop asking anyone's permission. And here, in 2012, Ray Davies is still, personally, actively, deciding who is and isn't allowed near his own songs. And here's what makes this one different from everything before it. This time, it isn't a label doing it to him. It isn't a union, or a publisher, or a producer holding the copyright over his head. It's him, doing it, on his own authority, over material that took him half a century to fully own outright. The kid who watched a publishing company acquire his songs before he even had a manager who'd fight for him, that kid is now the one closing the door on someone else's production to protect his own vision. That's the whole story right there, isn't it? Every fight on this list, the ban, the courtroom, the shelved solo record, the 2 flights over 2 words, the studio built out of sheer refusal to ask twice. All of it led here, to a man who spent a career being told no, finally being the one in the room who gets to say it.